Speaking of injured stars, and Luca, as we're recording this, is doing some work on the exercise bike with Maxi Kleba.
Oh,
So
good. Okay.
Mavs and five. Uh, Nuggets, Warriors. Steph has that foot injury. We haven't heard anything on as of this recording about whether he's going to play. I think the assumption is that the sort of extra week off is going to do him just fine.
Mhm.
And I'm of the mind that if he's going to play, I trust that he's going to be really good because he is someone who has had to come back from injuries, even in the playoffs before. And he's just so fucking great. Like you're not going to get me to doubt Steph Curry, but Nuggets won't have Jamal Murray or Michael Porter Jr. Warriors probably will have Steph. What are just your overarching thoughts on this series? Oh, we didn't do predictions for Nets Boston. My God, I'm a terrible podcaster. Who do you have in the Nets Boston series?
I have Boston in 6, and I almost want to go Boston in 5. I think Kevin Durant can single-handedly win one of their games. Maybe Kyrie does as well, but the matchups are just so bad for Brooklyn against Boston. It just feels like Boston has more answers than Brooklyn does.
I'm going to double down on my take that I just don't view the Nets as contenders this season, and it's not through any sort of just malice or agenda. The defense, I think, is just going to be abominable against better teams over the course of a 7-game series. And I question whether both Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant can keep what they're doing up at this scale when you look at the minutes they're playing. And I'm more concerned about Kyrie Irving because of his role this year. I'm going Boston in 5.
Love it. Love it.
All now right. We can go to Warriors Nuggets. What are your
Yes.
overarching thoughts on that series?
I mean, what did the Warriors do against Nikola Jokic, who is apparently heading to his second straight MVP award and well-deserved MVP award? If they can figure him out.
Not according to Drew Hanlon.
That's true. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Is this an advanced analytics podcast, or are we friendly here? Are we not friendly? I don't know what the.
Can you hit a left-handed layup and a free throw?
Probably not, honestly. So I guess I'm not a real hooper.
I can definitely hit a left-handed layup. I might be able to hit the free throw if I'm allowed to shoot it with my left hand and make it a hook shot.
There we go. Okay.
The only thing in my repertoire is a left-handed hook shot.
No, but I mean, that's the key. If the Warriors can somehow handle Jokic, any aspect of Jokic, whether scorer, rebounder, passer, if they can limit his effectiveness in even one of those 3 departments, they probably win the series going away. But I mean, if Steph is not back or if he is limited in any way, it's much like Luka. That at least opens the door for a Nuggets team that probably overachieved all year, given the absences of Murray and Porter. And then, I mean, it does. You're right. It doesn't sound like either of those guys are going to come back. But I love that the playoffs just have like a bunch of these series where it's like, well, what if Kawhi all of a sudden comes back? Or like, what if Murray and Porter all of a sudden decide? What if Ben Simmons plays? Like, they're
of those 4, Kawhi, Porter Jr., Murray, and Ben Simmons. If you had to pick one, and I don't think I'm forgetting any like major injuries because Steph and Luka are going to play at some point.
Yeah.
Of those 4, who would you deem most likely to return?
God. I don't think Kawhi. It's just so hard to know because like
it's Kawhi for me because I feel like there's a power vacuum in the West to where if I think a full strength Warriors team is close to the Suns, but for me, it is the Phoenix Suns and everybody else. Yeah. And if the Warriors look at all vulnerable at the start of like if the Nuggets beat the Warriors or if they like got out to it, I could just see, and the Clippers are in the playoffs. Let's just assume at that point, right. I could just see Kawhi be like, fuck it. I'm going to come back. Opportunity. The Warriors look a little weak. If we can beat the Suns, we become title favorites. I wouldn't pick them to beat the Suns, but that's my logic there.
Yeah. I mean, that would be their hardest test. If they win the 1-8, like they are probably cruising to the finals at that point.
Yeah, I'm with you there. But I'm sorry for interrupting. That was just, we have so many of these like, oh, will they, won't they? And they're not really looming over because let's just be honest, they won't. Right. But if they were, I think it would be Kawhi.
Yeah. But so I'm assuming neither Murray and Porter play in this series, or if they do, they play very limited minutes. So, I mean, like the Nuggets bench was an absolute crime scene for the first half of the year. And then the addition of DeMarcus Cousins, the addition of Bryn Forbes, and Bones Highland just really getting comfortable in his role has been a big thing for them. So, I think the Nuggets don't have the top end talent to compete with the Warriors outside of Jokic. So they're going to have to continue leaning on their depth. How do the Warriors contain Jokic, I think, is the single biggest question of the series from either side.
Yeah, I'm assuming we're going to see a lot of Draymond Green on Jokic, but I also, and I haven't decided on my X factor just yet, but like it might be Kevon Looney, if only because is he going to use all 6 of his fouls to make life tough on Jokic? But he will see time on because they're going to play Green and Looney together. They're just, and that's to probably help them on the defensive glass as well. They've generally been they've gotten by, as a defensive rebounding team, but like that probably gets a lot harder if you're using Wiggins or Porter as your other guy next to Draymond against a team with Jokic. So yeah, and I don't know how that looks, but I also wonder like how does Jokic match up with the Warriors, who like they're gonna be, they're like they move so fast even when they're not moving so fast. So like they're 8th in average offensive possession time, but I think that undersells how fast they can actually move in the half court, and that like could make life difficult on him because as good as he is on defense or as not bad as he is on defense, like this is not great hands in the right spots, but there are just some things where it's like if Steph turns a corner, if Jordan Poole turns a corner, or if like Klay Thompson is flying around him and like the Warriors are forcing switches or setting these off-ball screens, like what do you do? And so this feels like a uniquely bad matchup for both sides of the coin, where it's like, I don't know how you go about defending Jokic, but I also don't know that Jokic matches up all that well defensively against Golden State.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point. I mean, if Looney's on the floor, that gives him an out, I think. So, how much do we see of the quote unquote like death lineup 2.0 or 3.0 where they do, Steph, Klay, Poole, Wiggins, and Dre just to give Jokic nowhere to hide defensively?
We're just assuming like who gets the primary Steph assignment. Do we just assume that it's Aaron Gordon?
I guess. I mean, the Nuggets don't really have a good option. Gordon, because like Jeff Green maybe gets a little bit of time on him, but I don't love that. Will Barton, Monte Morris, like this is another one. It's similar to Brooklyn, Boston, where it's like the Warriors have a lot of potentially good answers for the Nuggets. The Nuggets do not have a ton of good answers for the Warriors.
I'm wondering how big the Nuggets bench becomes in this. Just if we assume that Jokic plays 40 minutes, how do they go about, like, are we going to see some of the smaller front courts then where it's Jeff Green is the 5 and maybe JaMychal Green kind of falls by the wayside, or maybe do you go to a Jeff Green, JaMychal Green combination here? I'd be more intrigued by like one of the Greens and then Aaron Gordon as sort of populating your front court in those minutes, because the Warriors just like Wiseman's we already know he's not going to play this season. And whether it's Looney or whether it's Draymond, like you're not going to have, like the Warriors aren't going to have this traditional, but you're not going to worry about Bielitsa either. So they're not going to have this traditional big in the middle. And that could provide a unique opportunity, I think, for the bench in many ways. Also because if I don't know how you're mirroring the non-Steph minutes for the Warriors offense is back to being a disaster without Steph Curry. I know Jordan Poole has come on. Klay Thompson has been great over his last 10 games or so. But since Steph Curry went down, and there's a lot of noise in this because of the teams they faced and also who they played, but the Warriors are 25th in points scored per possession. Like that is Steph Curry's MVP case right there. Like you don't even need to look at the on-off differentials that you took this dude away and the offense still imploded while you had two guys playing their best basketball of the season, at least for Klay Thompson, certainly. Like, how are you getting by if you're the Warriors in those minutes? I'm assuming it's a lot of Jordan Poole and Klay Thompson, but do you have like, is that enough? Just because Klay Thompson has been so good, but I feel like he's gotten better, and in part because like he's just not forcing it as much. He doesn't feel like he's putting the ball on the floor as much. And without Steph Curry and the threat of him doing literally everything, whether he has the ball or not, like you do need some of that on ball jet fuel. it's not newsflash. It's not going to be Andrew Wiggins. Like, let's not pretend that
All-star starter Andrew Wiggins. Thank you.
Excuse me. All-star starter Andrew Wiggins. It's going to be Jordan Poole then.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, and they've been pretty religious about like, we're not going to see a lot of Dre without Steph. Like, those are two that are good. Maybe it's different in the playoffs, but those are two players that we're going to see a lot of time together. And so does that, I'm asking questions about both. I don't want to call it their benches because like we're involving Klay Thompson and like, I don't like Jordan Poole's like just been one of their most important players all season. And it's not even depth overall, but like some of the I guess I'm questioning what the non-star minutes look like for both teams. You take Steph off the court, you take Jokic off the court. Who has the edge? Like in that scenario, not even head to head, but like whose rotation do you trust more without their star in it?
Yeah. I mean, again, I think the Warriors have more top end talent, even with sans Steph, sans Jokic. Like, you feel better if it's like Klay and Poole anchoring than I don't even know who would be anchoring for the war or for the Nuggets. But I will say Bones Highland maybe is spoiling my X factor here, but like I don't even know if he would be my X factor for the series, but he is the exact type of guy where it's like this guy can hit 3 or 4 threes in 3 minutes and all of a sudden the 12-point lead is gone. So like he is very capable of swinging a game. Like I would trust Poole more over the course of a series, but like Highland is the exact type of guy that the Nuggets will need to spring an upset.
And just to back up my point, the Warriors were almost league average on offense when Steph and Poole played without Curry this season. 112.2 points per 100, 47th percentile. You'll take those minutes, but there were some lineup combinations. And I think, there's the starting lineup without Steph was just awful. That lineup was minus 34.8 per 100. And so you had someone, you put in Otto Porter, like that helped it out a little bit, but the non-Steph questions for me are there, but I'm also with you that they do seem to have the more just like established supporting cast there. And I'm also questioning how much do we see the Nuggets rely on Bones Highland in this series? Is there the stigma of, it felt like Michael Malone put him into the lineup by necessity, like the personnel demanded it. Is he going to keep him there playing the type of minutes that he has been playing? And I would argue you probably should just do that because, as you mentioned, you start to run out of options pretty quickly. I don't even know what to buy you time in this matchup. Like, what is the Nuggets' best lineup without Jokic? And I don't want to say that like this focus too much on the no Jokic minutes, but like series can be won or lost during those 6 to 8 minute total stints per game. Right. We've seen it with Joel Embiid a couple of times.
Lord knows we have. Yeah, I mean, I think Highland, especially over the final month, like starting March the 2nd was their first game in March, but so this is the final 20 games of the season. He shot 47.8 overall, 41.2 from 3, average 14 points per game. I think he's their most reliable bench scorer at this point, which is crazy to say about a rookie who was selected late in the first round. But like you go down the list, and it's like, well, do you trust him more than Austin Rivers at this point? Probably so. Like PJ Dozier is not there for a ton of offense. I don't even want to mention Facundo Campazzo in fear of Nuggets fans. Bryn Forbes is there as well. I think he'll play an important role, but I think especially if you are just trying to keep pace with a nuclear Warriors offense, you're going to need big contributions from your bench and from guys like Bones and Bryn. And then, hey, like do we see a DeMarcus Cousins revenge series? Like, I
feel like he's is he going to be a non-fan? I was going to ask you who becomes more important to the series, DeMarcus Cousins, Austin Rivers, or Bryn Forbes?
I hope for the Nuggets' sake, I hope it is not Austin Rivers.
I think it's going to be Austin Rivers.
Oh boy, that's going to be rough.
It depends on, if you have Will Barton, maybe Aaron Gordon's going to be more on offense. And if Bones Highland is killing it, maybe you're less relying on him, but I think it's going to be Austin Rivers.
It's very possible. I will say, I think given the Warriors' lack of size and, with Draymond, it has not mattered and it will never matter, but like they don't have a ton of rotation guys above 6'7", 6'8", honestly. So like I think one of the keys to beating them is just destroying them on the glass, making sure you're limiting them to one shot opportunity. Because if you're giving Clay, Steph, Jordan Poole second or third chances on a possession, it's not going to add up in your favor over the course of the series. So that is one area where I could see Boogie helping out. But if the Warrior, like if they can match Boogie with Looney outside of starting minutes, like maybe it gives him a place to hide. But if he's going against Bjelica, that he's just, you don't want him scrambling out to the perimeter like that. And I'm interested. I don't think they're going to go this deep in their bench, but do the Warriors break out Kuminga at all? Because he's a guy that the Nuggets just seem to have no answer for, especially if Aaron Gordon's preoccupied with Steph.
And that's what I was also because once you get beyond Looney, like what are you doing with those minutes alongside Draymond Green, or how are you populating the front court? There's Draymond and Looney separate, of course, but like Otto Porter, and then like, couldn't we see Kuminga in this series? Maybe.
I think so. I hope so. Because I mean, he's, especially over the second half of the season, he popped, man. Like he showed that he is deserving of a rotation spot. He's not going to play like 30 plus minutes per game, but yeah, why not? Especially if the Nuggets try to go big with Boogie. Like you don't have a ton of big options, and his athleticism alone is really going to give the Nuggets a lot of trouble, I think.
Is this more of a Jonathan Kuminga or Gary Payton the second series?
Ooh.
I'll answer mine first and give you my reason.
Okay.
I think it might be Kuminga. And I know that Gary Payton's spot in the rotation has been, let's say, unstable, even though I think he's been huge for the Warriors. And, when you do your 6 man of the year ballots, he shouldn't win, but like he was in my honorable mentions for it.
Mm-hmm.
The Nuggets don't have like that dangerous point of attack score. If Jamal Murray or even Michael Porter Jr. was playing, I might go with Gary Payton the second. But because even if you just need bodies to throw at Jokic or fouls, I could see it being, I would probably pick like Otto Porter Jr. getting that before Kuminga maybe, but it feels like this would be more of a Kuminga series than just because of the way the Nuggets are built, more of a Kuminga series than a Gary Payton the second series. And look, even if it's just a matter of like the secondary front court minutes where it's, you're trying to match up with Jeff Green, or I feel like Zeke Najee's not going to play much this series, mostly because he's coming off that injury. But like, if you have to match up with like one of the Green brothers, or is Aaron Gordon all of a sudden like the 4 or something. So I think I don't feel too confident in it, but I think this is more of a Kuminga series.
Yeah, I mean, especially on the off chance that Michael Porter Jr. returns, he'd be instantly one of the best options there. And you're right. I mean, Monte Morris isn't that guy. Like Bones is more of a 3-point threat than he is. He's not going to like beat you off the dribble a ton. Or if he does, you have Draymond there lurking. So yeah, probably
and
more.
Also someone that I think Clay and even Jordan Poole, like if you don't want to trade off the offense, they can still handle that.
Yeah. So I would agree. It's probably more of a Kuminga series, but I have no sense of how deep Steve Kerr is going to go to his bench. Like, I mean, I guess that's part of the risk or the trouble with Clay. Like this is not prime Klay Thompson, and especially coming off of both of those injuries. Like, I don't know that you can ramp him up to 40 plus minutes a game. And Steph coming off of his injury, like, is he ready to play 40 minutes per game right off the bat? So that might be one advantage for the Nuggets, that like their guys, like they can lean more heavily on the starters if they need to than I think the Warriors probably can.
With that in mind, who is your X factor for, let's start with the Warriors here.
Probably Clay. Is that unfair? Is he like too high profile of a X factor?
I think because there's like so much variability now caked into his performances, at least in theory. Because do you expect the Klay Thompson that you've seen over the past few weeks? It's fair if you do, but I also get if you maybe wouldn't. And then sort of the other part of all this though is his role defensively has changed. His matchup difficulty per B-ball index is lower. his positional versatility. He's classified as a wing stopper, where he's probably in years past, I should look this up before I'm spouting it, was more of like a point of attack guy. Like I guess it's not as important in this series just because we already mentioned that, Bones Highland, Monte Morris, are those guys going to instill fear in you as like from the point of attack? I honestly don't know, but yeah, I think it's totally fair to say Clay.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of it again is,
by the way, he's actually had more positional defensive versatility this year than in the previous 2 seasons he played per and he's always been classified as a wing stopper, which is actually it surprised me a little bit just because we've seen him so much guard the other team's like best ball handler.
Yeah, that does surprise me. And a lot of it is like, which Clay are you going to get? Are you going to get the last couple of weeks? Are you going to get, well, I think hopefully what we saw early on where he was a lot more inconsistent, he's shaken off the rust. He played 32 games. Like, I don't think he's going to be the Clay of old, but I mean, he's still a high volume, very efficient 3-point shooter, and that's not going to change. It's just how many minutes can he play and how does he handle his matchup defensively? Like, I think he will be fine, and I think that will work out in the Warriors' favor, but you don't know with someone who, we've seen play 32 games of basketball in 3 years.
Who are you throwing on Clay? Who are you throwing on Jordan Poole? And if the Warriors have those two playing with Steph for stretches, like, what is Denver's answer?
Right. I mean, because you can, like, where is Monte Morris in that scenario? Because if you have Aaron Gordon on Steph, maybe you do Will Barton on Clay, and I don't love that. Or you'd have to do
Monte on Jordan Poole. I think that would be what you have. I'm trying to think of, like, is this Austin Rivers breaking case? I don't think he's going to give you that much more resistance that you take Will Barton off the court, or Monte Morris for that matter. I mean, you run out of options there really quick. That could be another question, is if Steph is available, like, how much do we see the 3-guard lineup versus this version of the Nuggets?
I would imagine a lot, because I think it is going to force the Nuggets into kind of a breaking point, unless, barring Murray or Michael Porter Jr. coming back.
And also they've been a plus 33.6 per 100 on the floor together.
That's all.
Yeah, I don't know who to pick for my X factor. I get Clay. I also thought about Jordan Poole, just because there are just going to be minutes where Steph Curry is not on the floor, even if he's playing. And can you be even close to net neutral during those? A lot of that's going to fall on Poole. I thought about like Porter or Kuminga because of the secondary big minutes they're going to have to log. I refuse to pick Andrew Wiggins, even though if he's giving you anything on offense or is sort of a weak side rebounder, that's a huge X factor.
Sure.
I think I'm just going to settle on Kevon Looney, because on an individual possession basis, he's going to spend the most time on Nikola Jokic. Yeah. And that is the Warriors' biggest question. They might have fewer questions to answer than Denver in this series, but it is their biggest one. And I'm not saying he's the quintessential answer, but if Draymond Green is able to continue captaining the entire defense and he's more of someone who helps out with Jokic and then does everything else, it probably gives you a better shot. So how much are we going to see Kevon Looney? He is going to be, again, when he's on the floor, like, that's your primary option against Jokic. And then just what does that look like?
Yeah. I mean, if the 3 guards plus Wiggins plus Dre lineup can hold their own against Jokic, that's probably curtains for the Nuggets. So they need to hope that Jokic destroys those lineups, forces them into playing Looney more, and then, he destroys those lineups as well.
Denver is X factor.
Got to be Aaron Gordon, right? I think, just given his importance defensively in this series, and then also, what do they get out of him offensively? Like, Jokic is incredible, and he's going to get his, but he needs a secondary scorer unless Murray or Porter come back. Barton, Morris, Highlands will all give them something. Jeff Green will give them a little bit, but they need like a clear-cut number 2 guy. So Gordon is just going to have a huge role on both ends of the floor here. And if he comes up short on either end, probably not looking great for the Nuggets.
I went with Will Barton, who I feel like we haven't talked about much on this, because for all the reasons you mentioned about the offense, is maybe he's one that's tasked with running some more Nikola Jokic-less units, or is it just Aaron Gordon has cooled off a bunch, or Will Barton has cooled off a bunch since the trade deadline. Like, if he can play better, That's huge for your offense. We also have to believe that I think Golden State understands that you can't lose track of Monte Morris in the half court anymore because that dude can stroke it from long range and mid range. And there might be more of a focus on containing him at points. But also, just if you need, like, let's be honest, who is their best point of attack playmaker right now? Is it Monte Morris? Is it Bones Highland? Or is it Will Barton? And even we can obfuscate the point of attack definition because I know like none of those guys meet the bill there.
Right.
I would argue if you want to go with best, maybe Bones Highland, just because there's more unpredictability, at least aesthetically, when I'm watching him, functionally watching him.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's actually Will Barton.
Yeah, I think especially like because Bones, again, he's more of a 3-point threat, I think, than Barton, although like the shot distribution wouldn't reflect it this year, but you map it on a per minute basis, it would. Barton is definitely more of a guy who is going to attack you off the dribble. So yeah, I mean, I don't know how much success he's going to have doing that in this series, but if he is, that's a great shout as an X factor, because that could be just, they need something other than, okay, Jokic, do everything.
Yeah, I would agree. Predictions.
This one's tough without knowing. It's similar to like the Luka Dallas thing, without knowing exactly what to expect out of Steph early on. Like fully healthy Steph game 1, probably Warriors in 5 or 6. And given the wild card of a potential Murray and Porter return, although I don't think it's especially likely, I'm going to go the coward's way and say Warriors in 7.
I'm going to say Warriors in 6. I think they're that problematic of a matchup for Denver. And I don't look forward to the discourse surrounding Nikola Jokic if he gets bounced in the first round again. The MVP is a regular season award, and let's not pretend that the Nuggets are anything close to full strength here.
I think he is a fraud, and real hoopers know that. KD, especially. Shout out to Kevin Durant.
How is Joel Embiid not the MVP when he won the scoring title? That's just the only. How is he not the MVP?
You tell me.